Martha Thompson, a 36-year-old woman, lived in a small rural village in the U.S., surrounded by the rolling fields of Redfield. Farm life in the village was simple, but Martha's circumstances were anything but. For years she had worked tirelessly at Redfield Farm, but recent changes had left many villagers struggling. The farm management had stopped paying wages, forcing Martha and others to find alternative ways to make a living with her income cut off. Martha began selling eggs by the roadside. Each day, she carefully packed her eggs into cartons and set up her stall at the edge of the village, hoping to attract passing motorists. Her home, a small, aging structure with peeling paint and a roof that desperately needed repairs, seemed to reflect her own financial struggles. She had hoped to fix the roof with the help of her neighbor Tommy Brooks, who was willing to lend a hand, but she needed money for materials for selling. Eggs was her only option one particularly sweltering summer morning. Martha set up her stall as usual. The sun beat down relentlessly, causing beads of sweat to form on her forehead. She placed the cartons of eggs in neat rows, arranging them carefully to catch the eye of potential buyers. The heat was oppressive, and Martha felt the weight of her worries grow heavier as the hours passed with only a few customers stopping by. She needed a good day of sales to buy the supplies Tommy needed for the roof repairs. As Martha adjusted her display, she noticed a young boy standing by the bus stop a short distance away. He looked about 11 or 12 years old with a worried expression on his face. Martha watched as the bus pulled away, leaving the boy standing alone. He seemed hesitant, glancing around as if unsure of where to go next. Martha's heart went out to him. She could see he was in distress, and despite her own struggles, she felt a strong urge to help. The boy tried to approach the bus driver, who shook his head and drove off without letting him board. Martha saw the boy's shoulders slump in defeat. Unable to ignore the situation, she decided to approach him. She grabbed a small carton of eggs and a piece of bread she had packed for herself and walked over to where the boy was sitting on the curb. "Hey there, young man," Martha said gently, offering him the bread and eggs. "Are you all right? You look like you could use something to eat." The boy looked up at her, his eyes wide with surprise and gratitude. "Thank you," he said softly, taking the bread and eggs from her. "I'm Ethan Parker. I was trying to get to my dad's house, but I don't have any money for the bus. The driver wouldn't let me." On Martha's heart sank as she heard his story. Ethan explained that he had run away from his mother's relatives who had mistreated him and was trying to reunite with his father, who lived in a town a few hours away. Martha could see the desperation in his eyes and knew she had to help despite her own tight finances. She felt a deep sense of responsibility. "I don't have much," Martha said, her voice firm with determination, "but here's all I have left: $130. It should be enough for a bus ticket. I hope it gets you where you need to go." Ethan's eyes widened in surprise and relief. "Are you sure I don't want to take all your money?" Martha smiled kindly. "It's all right. I've been in tough spots myself, and I know what it's like to need help. Just promise me you'll get to your dad safely." Ethan nodded, his face lighting up with gratitude. "Thank you so much. I'll make sure to pay it forward someday." As Ethan hurried off to catch the next bus, Martha watched him go with a mixture of sadness and hope. She knew her own situation was dire, but the act of helping someone in need had given her a sense of purpose and relief. She returned to her stall, her heart a little lighter despite the challenges ahead. The day dragged on with only a few more says to show for her efforts. Martha packed up her things at the end of the day, exhausted but satisfied that she had made a difference, even if only in one person's life. Little did she know that Ethan's journey and her own struggles were about to intertwine in ways she could never have anticipated years past since Martha Thompson had given her last $30 to Ethan Parker. She was now 51 and life had not grown any easier. The harsh sun still beat down on the small rural village where she lived, and Redfield Farm, the very heart of her community, remained unkindly managed by Henry Walters, the new farm manager. Martha's life had only become more difficult over the years. The repairs she needed for her home had been postponed repeatedly due to a lack of funds. The roof was still in disrepair, and the walls of her small house seemed to be sagging under the weight of her ongoing hardships. Tommy Brooks, her handy neighbor, had promised to help her with the repairs, but Martha's financial constraints had prevented her from gathering the necessary materials. One dreary afternoon, Martha stood by her roadside egg stall, which now looked even more worn out than before. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over her eggs. The few passers-by were few and far between, and the meager sales were hardly enough to cover her daily expenses, let alone the cost of repairs. Her spirits were low when Henry Walters, the farm manager, drove by in his sleek new vehicle. He had always been aloof and dismissive, and today was no different. He glanced at Martha's stall with a mixture of contempt and disinterest before speeding off. His disregard for the workers at Redfield Farm was well known, and Martha had felt his coldness personally. She sighed deeply, her shoulders slumping as she packed up her unsold eggs. She had hoped for a better day, but it seemed that luck was not on her side. As she carried her things back to her small, dilapidated house, she thought about her conversation with Helen Davis, her former coworker and neighbor. Helen had visited her recently and shared stories of their better days, a stark contrast to the present. As Martha approached her home, she noticed Helen waiting at her doorstep. Helen looked concerned, her face lined with worry. "Martha," she said, her voice tinged with sympathy, "you look exhausted. How are you holding up?" "It's been tough," Martha admitted, her voice heavy with weariness. "I'm struggling to make ends meet, and the house repairs are still on hold. Henry Walters doesn't care about us at all. He's made it clear that our loyalty means nothing to him." Helen shook her head. "It's such a shame. We worked so hard for that farm, and now we're left with nothing." The two women sat on Martha's creaky porch, reminiscing about better times and discussing the current injustices they faced. Martha felt a small comfort in sharing her frustrations with Helen, but it did little to ease the burden of her reality. Later that week, as Martha was preparing to settle in for the night, she heard the distinct sound of a car pulling up outside. It was not the usual clunky old vehicle of a villager, but a luxury black car that looked out of place in their small, struggling village. Curious and a bit apprehensive, Martha opened her door to find Ethan Parker stepping out of the car. He was now a grown man, dressed sharply in a suit with an air of confidence that spoke of success. Beside him was a man she assumed was his father, Jacob Parker. Ethan's face, though older, was unmistakable, and Martha's heart skipped a beat. "Martha Thompson," Ethan called out, his voice carrying a tone of recognition and warmth. "It's me, Ethan. I don't know if you remember me, but I'm here because of what you did for me years ago." Martha's eyes widened in astonishment. "Ethan, I can hardly believe it. You've grown so much." Ethan smiled, stepping forward with his father. "Yes, I've grown up quite a bit. I wanted to thank you for your kindness all those years ago. You gave me the $30 I needed to reach my father, and that changed my life. My father and I have been able to build a good life together, and now I want to help you." Jacob Parker, standing beside Ethan, nodded in agreement. "We've heard about your situation, and we're here to make things right. We want to help you repair your home and get things back on track." Martha was overwhelmed. Tears welled up in her eyes as she looked at Ethan and Jacob, unable to find the words to express her gratitude. "I don't know what to say. This is more than I could have ever imagined." As Ethan and Jacob began discussing plans for repairing Martha's house, the weight of her struggles seemed to lift, replaced by a glimmer of hope she hadn't felt in years. The unexpected kindness from Ethan, the boy she had helped so long ago, had come full circle, bringing with it the promise of a brighter future. The arrival of Ethan Parker and his father, Jacob, had been a beacon of hope for Martha Thompson. Over the next few days, they took swift action to transform Martha's life. Jacob, with his business acumen, quickly arranged for a contractor, Joe Miller, to start repairing Martha's home. Joe and his team arrived with a flurry of activity, bringing much-needed materials and tools. Martha watched in awe as the once dilapidated house began to take on a new, hopeful appearance. The repairs were extensive. The roof was patched and strengthened, walls were reinforced, and the old sagging porch was replaced. Martha was astonished by the speed and quality of the work. Her house, once a symbol of her struggles, was slowly becoming a place of comfort and security. During this period, Martha had several conversations with Ethan and Jacob. They shared stories about their lives, how Ethan had grown up, and the challenges they had overcome. Ethan, now a successful businessman, spoke with passion about his ventures and the difference his father had made in his life. Jacob, a kind and considerate man, expressed his gratitude for Martha's earlier kindness and how it had inspired their desire to help her. One afternoon, as Joe Miller's team worked diligently on the repairs, Martha noticed the familiar luxury car of Henry Walters pulling into her driveway. Henry, looking agitated and out of place in the midst of the repair work, stepped out with a scowl. "What's going on here?" Henry demanded, his voice sharp and accusatory. "Who's paying for all this? How can you afford such extensive repairs?" Martha, taken aback by his sudden intrusion, looked to Ethan and Jacob for support. Ethan stepped forward, his demeanor calm but firm. "Henry Walters, this is a private matter. Martha's situation has been taken care of by us, and we are handling all the expenses." Henry's face reddened with frustration. "I don't believe this. How could she possibly manage such work?" Jacob, stepping up beside Ethan, added, "We plan to discuss the treatment of workers at Redfield Farm with you. We've heard about the way you've been running things, and we believe it's time for a serious review. There might be an investigation into the farm's practices, including a potential audit." Henry's eyes widened in panic. "An investigation? You can't do that." Jacob's steady gaze didn't waver. "We can and we will, if necessary. Martha and other workers deserve better treatment, and it's time for the farm's management to be held accountable." As Henry left in a flurry of anger, Martha felt a renewed sense of hope. The intervention of Ethan and Jacob was more than just physical repairs. It was a powerful statement against the injustices she had endured. The possibility of a review of Redfield Farm's practices brought a sense of justice she hadn't dared to hope for. Over the next few weeks, Martha's house was transformed. The once worn-out home was now vibrant and welcoming. The repairs had not only fixed the physical structure, but had also restored Martha's spirit. She spent hours in her newly improved home, reflecting on the kindness she had experienced and the unexpected turn her life had taken. One evening, after a day of overseeing the final touches on her house, Martha and Ethan sat together on her freshly repaired porch. Ethan looked at Martha with a thoughtful expression. "You know, Martha," he began, "I've been thinking about how you made such a difference in my life. I want to make sure you know just how much your kindness meant to me and my father," Ethan said. Martha, her eyes moist with emotion, responded, "I'm just so grateful for everything you've done." I never imagined that a simple act of kindness could come back to me in such a significant way. Ethan smiled warmly. Kindness has a way of coming full circle. I hope you'll always remember that. As they sat in the warm glow of the evening, Martha felt a profound sense of gratitude and renewal. Her life had been dramatically altered by the kindness she had shown years ago, and she could now look forward to a future filled with hope and possibility. One bright morning, as Martha was enjoying a cup of coffee on her newly repaired porch, she heard the familiar hum of Ethan's luxury black car approaching. Ethan and Jacob had become regular visitors, often bringing updates and spending time with Martha. Today, they arrived with an air of excitement. "Martha, we have some news for you," Ethan announced as they stepped out of the car. Martha's curiosity was piqued. "What is it?" Jacob, smiling broadly, began, "Ethan and I have been discussing how we can make a positive impact in the community. We want to extend our support beyond just your home." Martha looked between them, her eyes wide with surprise. "What do you mean?" Ethan continued, "We've been thinking about how the treatment of workers at Redfield Farm has been unfair. We believe that by making our intentions clear, we can inspire some real change." Jacob nodded in agreement. "We scheduled a meeting with the farm's management. Our goal is to ensure that all workers are treated with respect and receive fair wages. We hope this will set a precedent for how employees should be valued." Martha felt a swell of hope and relief. "That's wonderful. The workers at Redfield Farm deserve so much more. Thank you both for standing up for them." As the days passed, the meeting with the farm management took place. Ethan and Jacob presented their case with compelling arguments, highlighting the mistreatment of workers and proposing reforms. The farm's management, initially defensive, began to understand the gravity of the situation. Ethan's and Jacob's resolve, combined with the possibility of a formal audit, prompted a commitment to address the issues. Back at Martha's home, life began to settle into a new routine. Ethan and Jacob's support had not only repaired her house, but had also given her a renewed sense of purpose. With the repairs complete, Martha took the time to enjoy her surroundings, often hosting small gatherings for friends and neighbors. Helen Davis, Martha's former co-worker and neighbor, was one of the first to visit after the renovations. She marveled at the transformation. "Martha, your home looks amazing. I can't believe the difference. It's like a new place." Martha smiled, grateful for Helen's support. "It's all thanks to Ethan and Jacob. Their kindness has made such a difference in my life." Helen's eyes sparkled with admiration. "You must feel so relieved and happy. It's good to see that someone is finally standing up for the workers at Redfield Farm." Martha nodded. "Yes, it's been an incredible journey. I feel a renewed sense of hope for the future." One evening, as Martha was preparing dinner, Ethan and Jacob arrived with a small surprise. They had brought a large basket filled with fresh eggs from Martha's own farm, along with a handwritten note. The note read, "To Martha, with gratitude for your unyielding kindness and for showing us what it means to care. From Ethan and Jacob." Martha's eyes filled with tears as she read the note. She felt overwhelmed by the depth of their generosity and the impact it had on her life. As the story of Martha's kindness spread, more people in the village began to notice the positive changes. The improvements at Redfield Farm and the sense of community support brought a new vibrancy to the village. The workers, now treated with greater respect, were more motivated and hopeful about their futures. Ethan's visits to Martha's home became regular, and he often spoke of his desire to make Martha's home a second home for himself. He had grown close to her and appreciated her as a second family. Martha welcomed the idea, feeling that Ethan and Jacob had become an integral part of her life. One crisp autumn evening, as the sun set over the village, Ethan and Jacob sat with Martha on her porch. The air was filled with a sense of accomplishment and contentment. "Martha," Ethan said, "I want you to know that you've become a significant part of my life. Your kindness has inspired me to make a difference, and I'd like to make your home a second home for myself." Martha's heart swelled with warmth. "Ethan, I'd be honored. It feels like we've come full circle. Your support has given me so much, and I'm grateful for the bond we've formed." The story concluded with Martha feeling a deep sense of fulfillment and belonging. The kindness she had once extended had come full circle, transforming not only her own life, but also the lives of those around her. The village, the farm, and her home were all a testament to the power of compassion and the unexpected blessings that can arise from a simple, selfless act.